Revolution Radio. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome back to David Mackey's Shiny Side Out. Coming to you from Revolution.radio, from the land down under. It's not full of crisis actors. We're not sitting in some bunker in Des Moines. This is a real country. And donate if you can, please. Like Nighthawk just said, keep the fight going, to keep the station on the air, keep the electrons moving through those copper wires, such as they are. Please donate. If you can't donate, tell people about it. Maybe they can donate. Now, without further ado, though, you're now partaking in the second hour of our show today, in which we will talk about the unseen world. Now, today is going to be a bit of a behind-the-scenes look, I guess, of the unseen world and what prompted us to do this show cycle, to explain our thought processes and some of the more pertinent points about it. We intend to look at it with as much evidence as we can find, and then again, fill the gaps with our hilarious commentary.
Yes.
It's so funny. Now, what prompted me specifically, and then I discussed it with Dave to look at it, was one incident. I think it might have been 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was watching the Skinwalker Ranch, a documentary you might be familiar with. Very interesting. And now again, the Skinwalker Ranch, not to belabor the point, it seems to be a place where a lot of strange phenomena seem to occur. Very difficult to come to any conclusions. People have studied it for decades now. There's a new team that has now, in the 5th year, I think, they're studying this, and they made a TV show out of it and share whatever they find with the wider audience. And I think it's the History Channel where it airs. But
it is.
Yeah, but the point is, there it is, and it's privately owned at the moment, and the team that works at the ranch works for the person that owns the ranch. Now, there was an experiment conducted at an area they call the Triangle. It's sort of a triangular shaped kind of a causeway just in front of the mesa. It's a fairly large mesa that sits at the back of the property. And a lot of strange things have happened there. Instrumentation doesn't work, GPS signals go off the rocker, and et cetera, et cetera. So what they did with this particular experiment, they brought in a high-speed photography expert. And I think it was to the tune of 1,000 frames a second.
Or greater. Mm-hmm.
Or greater, yeah, what his camera can shoot. And they launched rockets into what they perceived was the anomalous region of space above the triangle, because that's where all the measurements were going wrong and, a whole bunch of strange stuff had happened. So they proceeded to do that. And one of the rockets went up, and at about 30 feet, some 10 odd meters, it simply exploded. It looked like it had been pushed off to the side a little, but then the rocket just exploded. Notice, they thought it might malfunction. Who knows, right? A lot of things malfunction on Skinwalker Ranch. However, when they analyzed the high-speed footage of that event, they came upon a frame. And I think it's just a one frame. Might have been more than one frame, but wasn't a lot of frames. They came upon a frame where there was this sort of ghostly outline of some kind of bulbous structure about 30 feet above the ground.
It appeared in the footage as a cloudy, opaque, like spheroid.
Yes.
right, in the path of that rocket.
Yeah. And it seems that the rocket explosion or the ambient light from it or whatever illuminated that object for a fraction of a second.
Yep.
So our refresh rate in our eyes is not fast enough to have seen it. So you can do it a million times, you will never see it. The high-speed camera, though, did catch it. Like I said, it was only one or only, I think it was only one frame, but it might have been a couple of frames, so I'm not going to go into detail there, but only a few frames. So we're talking about fractions and very small fractions of seconds. We're talking about microsecond fractions here, right? And so they saw that. So clearly some of the ambient light from the explosion must have illuminated something for a very, very, very brief moment in time. But there it is. There it is. It's there. You can't argue with it. It's on the frame. The video or the photo or the camera captured it.
Yeah, that's right. Now the rocket was in path to collide with this object, but before doing so, the rocket exploded.
Exactly. Now that set me thinking: how many things do we not see? And we're going to go into some more detail as to what the human eye can actually perceive as far as frequency is concerned. And we discussed this before, but it behooves us to once again point out just how little we actually see when it comes to the electromagnetic spectrum. We have a tiny little, white light. That's what we get. White light. That's all there is for us. Okay. All the colors from ultraviolet to infrared. That's in between. That's what we see. Not ultraviolet, not infrared, but in between we can see some stuff, and it's very, very little. See, right? We can feel infrared as heat, right? We can't really feel ultraviolet. Can't feel it. So, for the most part, it goes undetected. And then, of course, the spectrum goes much, 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 much further. That same can be said for the auditory spectrum, of course. For any kind of frequency we can hear.
I've got a graphic up for those people on YouTube. Yeah.
Thanks, buddy. That's awesome. And of course, what we hear pales in comparison with what, for instance, dogs certainly can hear. Most other animals, in fact, and certainly bats. Bats have phenomenal. In fact, they're using their echolocation capabilities to navigate. In mid-flight. Now that's pretty spectacular.
So humans have 20, let's at averages at 20 to 20 kilohertz. That range for audio. We feel below that to a certain extent, but we don't hear it. And dog whistles are higher than our capability. They're up in the 23 kilohertz, and it's just something that our ears are not able to measure. We can't monitor that frequency. It's just in their design. It's not a fault of ours. It's just that that's their operating range.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, like if you two examples where this has been these inabilities, and this is one is for sound, one is for visual acuity. They've been used commercially. So the first one is sound, and I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Alien. Sigourney Weaver, original movie. I thought at the time.
I do love it.
Yeah, I thought it was a masterpiece. Still think it's awesome. Nonetheless, what the director did was he embedded ultrasonic or hypersonic sounds that we can't hear, but we do perceive in order to induce terror. So to make the movie even scarier, he put these sounds in which we can't really perceive, but we are put on edge by. It makes us uneasy, right? Just to add to the horror or we might feel, or the scare effect. So that's one. The second one is the refresh rate of our eye. Now it's no longer allowed. Okay, there's a law against it now, but back in the day, right? Coca-Cola specifically, and I have to say this because
this was done at the movie theater.
That is correct. In the cinema, now, again, there's a certain frame rate a movie is shown at, so we can see
23 frames per second is what we see cinema at.
That's correct. Now, they added a few more frames, which were slightly outside of our conscious capacity to detect. And it would be an advertisement for example, drink Coca-Cola. It'd be so refreshing. Or, hey, go and get some Fizzlers or doohickeys and Nubgockers and whatever they're called, right?
It's part of subliminal techniques, subliminal.
100%.
So these are beyond your perception's ability to recognize it being there, but your subliminal programming within you, your brain's ability to actually perceive it outside of your cognitive system perceiving it, still brings it in. Now, our human eyes can do 60 frames per second. The movies are at 32 frames a second. I'm a little higher. My rate's a bit higher. And they would put it up for 1 or maybe 2 frames of the 32 frames a second.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, I feel a bit peckish.
I'm thirsty for that icy cold Coke, Mickey.
Yeah, a refreshing beverage is what I require. and sales did go up. It works. We know that subliminal works. Now there's another. I mean, there's one that is neither out of our hearing or visual range, but which I think is extremely clever. Before cigarettes were, I guess, put into a generic package here in Australia, they all had their brand images. And one cigarette company, Camel, had a camel on the front.
That's right.
Of its cover. Now, drawn into the camel at the hind leg is the figure of a naked man. If you don't know it, you will never see it. Once you have seen it, you can never unsee it. But there's a figure of a naked man with a rather large, naturally gifted implement, let's call it, right? Now, of course, making Camel a very masculine cigarette because they were marketing to men, right? So you've got this naked man with a very large apparatus at the hind leg of the camel.
And the foreleg is a military person. I'll actually paste in so that you can see it. There's a human in a fetal position at the hip. All of these were intentional. Make no mistake.
So it's actually the front leg with the apparatus, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, but the point is, once you see it, you will never, ever, ever not see it.
Exactly.
And it is that kind of advertising that people, in fact, still do, right? So to be clear, whatever you think you see or hear, you probably don't.
Now the other one is ice cubes can't be photographed. You can photograph an ice cube and know what it is, but you don't see the facets on it like a diamond.
Yes.
They're washed out. So what they would do is their artisans in their advertising people would draw details into the ice cubes, and in subliminal, because I'd studied this, they would draw in intentional imagery that your subliminal conscious, the unconscious part of you, would remember and utilize. So if it was a whiskey bottle, for instance, they wanted you by desire to choose that when you felt a certain way. So by putting death symbols or sexy naked women drawn in as reflections on the outside of the bottle or within the ice cubes, when you felt a particular way, you were drawn to their particular product. And it's really great brand connection because these are emotional connections that you're making with these things.
100%.
And yes, it's illegal, but they still do things.
they do.
Allegedly.
We didn't see that. Look! Wow! We had no idea. What a coinky dinky. So you can't trust what you see. But so this is sort of.
Let's say the Amazon logo. But I'll shut up. I'll say no more because it's alleged.
It's alleged, but you can bring it up and show us, all right. But
he did make a spaceship in the same shape.
That's right. Exactly. And this is really so. The reason we're mentioning this is to highlight the fact that, well, it does exist. These phenomena exist. we do have a certain frame rate that we operate by. We do have a certain frequency range which we experience. These are facts. You can stand on your head and not want, like, it's just how it is. And we all dream of super hearing and super vision, but a lot of us simply don't have that. And then if something were to move faster than the refresh rate of your eye, you simply wouldn't see it.
That's right.
You have no, and this is in fact why I mentioned the Skinwalker Ranch, where it only appears for a few frames, if that, as an observable phenomenon, right? Again, the naked eye, even a normal camera, video camera, would not have been able to catch it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you had to have a super high speed camera to catch that. Now, that's just to give you an idea how quickly these phenomena can appear and disappear. Now, on top of that, we are talking about appearing and disappearing UFOs or UAPs. I don't care what you call them, right? These phenomena which we don't know what they are. We know they're real. Okay, that is sure. I'm no longer arguing with anyone over whether or not UFOs are real.
No.
It's a real phenomenon. Don't know what they are, but it's a thing. Okay, let's all just put that to bed, because I don't want to have that argument anymore. It's completely pointless. But we don't know what they are, but they do appear and disappear. Not just do they move at incredible speeds with incredible maneuvers, but no, they blink in and out of existence.
That's true.
Okay, and it goes further yet. Sometimes we see something out of the corner of our eye. Our peripheral vision is extremely acute. It had to be, because if a saber-toothed tiger was sneaking up on us, then we want to know about it. So our peripheral vision is cued to motion, and it's a lot better than your straight-on vision. If something moves in your peripheral vision, or you think something is moving, it is. There is something moving. When you look at it, it might not be there, but something moved. That you can take that to the bank, because that's the way we're wired.
Absolutely. In fact, we have motion-sensitive peripheral vision, which is even more sensitive than our frontal vision.
100%.
Yes.
100%. So it's a thing.
So pay attention to what you see, because that's one of the things that has saved us individually, historically. Yeah.
And look, and sometimes we see something, but of course we dismiss it simply because we can't really, it's not there when we look at it, but it doesn't mean it wasn't there when we saw it out of the corner of our eye. And sometimes we get a feeling, it's like someone's watching us, or we get the hackles on the back of our neck, the hair stand up, things like that. These are real things that happen to us. On top of that, and I know we spoke about this before, but it's all sort of clicked into place when I watched this single frame of the phenomenon on Skinwalker Ranch. Cats, dogs,
yes,
mostly cats and dogs, other animals too, but cats and dogs, I guess,
and young kids
and young children.
Yeah,
usually pre-vocal,
yes,
but not necessarily, or pre-verbal, I should say, but not necessarily. They will stare into space, or smile and laugh, or sometimes wave, or whatever. Or in the case of the animals, they might get spooked by nothing, as far as we're concerned.
Or watch things move throughout the space.
Yes.
Not space, but throughout the space they're sitting in. Like observing them move. Yeah, yes. It's crazy.
And there's this great show, I think it's called Paranormal Caught on Camera, or whatever, it doesn't really matter, but and sometimes you just see this gold. There was this clip, and this was, I think, a security camera or baby camera. I don't really remember. But essentially it was a cat. I think it was a cat that was sitting somewhere on the bed or whatever. Might have been a dog, but it was definitely a pet animal. And you could see the animal reacting to something and then following it around with its eyes. Like it was actually as though it were following something moving. There's nothing there. In contrast, once you put contrast filters into the video, though, there was like an orb-like thing that was moving through the room, which the cat or dog, I can't remember, actually saw and reacted to and moved away from. And as you look closer, you could actually see how that orb affected, I think it was a blanket. It moved the blanket physically.
Wow.
Now, initially, all of those visual clues you only saw the cat or the dog. You didn't see any of the other things. But once you put the orb into the context, all of a sudden you saw all of the other things that the orb was affecting as well, and it made sense as a totality of experience. But you had to put some kind of contrast filter on it to see it. And then you have stories about the invisible and unseen world. Okay, people being abducted, people disappearing. In fact, 411, people are disappearing. Where are they going?
That's right.
We spitballed some of our theories with you guys before. Wormholes, stationary wormholes, time displacements, and I believe that if some of these victims, let's call them, lost physical touch with their belongings, they would slingshot back. In my opinion, maybe not always, but certainly it seems that because we have found articles of clothing, neatly folded shoes, neatly put aside, and other equipment in our time again, or in our surroundings, they were found, even though that area had been searched. They appeared afterwards, and there they are. So they must have slingshot back from wherever they were in the first place, which brings to mind also the work of Jose Escamilla and the Rods. And you can see this is a much, and again, all of this sort of fell into place when we discussed Skinwalker Ranch. Because these rods move too fast for us to actually perceive them. And I know there's been debunking on it, they're insects and this and that. And we're very specifically talking about the rod phenomenon, not insects appearing in your frame of your video or your photograph. None of that. These are various, and you can, when it's the real thing, you can actually see it. It's quite a distinct thing. And we actually had Jose before he passed on our show twice.
Yeah, twice, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't really speak much about the rod phenomenon, but we did speak about the moon and the Clementine mission. He was a great guest. He was a great guy.
He opened the world up to the moon being in color.
Oh, it was phenomenal. I mean, I still have the images. Anyway, but so there are seemingly these things, creatures, beings, phenomena that move faster than we can see. And then recently, and to my knowledge for the first time, my kids and I watched Epic. Now, Epic is a movie, fantasy movie, animation that is a few years old now, but I can't really remember seeing it with my kids. My kids had never seen it, I'm sure, so we watched it. It was fun. It was the scientist that was trying to prove the existence of elves and such, and little magical creatures in his backyard and in the surrounding forest. And what it is in that Epic animation movie, they move faster than us. So I give you an example. The way they portrayed it was really quite beautiful, right? They slowed it right down, and the man was walking through his house, and he was like a lumbering, slow giant. Like it was like moving really slow, whereas the little people moved very, very fast. Like you can't see the wing of a bee.
That's right.
They can. They move at the speed of a wing beat of the bee, right? To put it in context. So even if you looked at them, they would be moving far too fast for you to see them. Okay, and it's the same with. I mean, we had a mouse in the house. Something with a mouse in the house. The mouse. And I saw it out of the corner of my eye. That's the first time I saw it when it moved, because it was fast. So I saw it. I saw movement, and I looked. There was nothing to be seen. And then you're very clever. You stand still, and eventually you catch a proper glimpse of it. But the point is, it was the initial fast movement that I caught the mouse with, or at least became aware of it. And just imagine something that would move a lot faster than a mouse, because a mouse pretty much moves at our speed still. It's fast, but it's not vibrating out of existence because we just can't see it so fast.
Yeah.
Whereas I mean, a bee's wing might as well not exist as far as we're concerned. We can't see it. The bee is flying through the air, and there's a bit of a blurry motion, but I don't know. If I didn't know about bees, I wouldn't really understand how this thing stays up in air.
That's right. Because you see the fuselage or the body, and then wow. Mosquitoes also, they're extraordinary in what they do. I'm going to say something, Mickey, and in my book, I wrote about an experience when I was living in Surrey Hills where we suddenly lost power, and there was in the whole area went dark, and there was a party up the street who had loud music, and I was up late, and from the only light that was still there, which wasn't even street lights, it was the moonlight coming through. There was something that seemed to just come through the wall. I had a very, very long, it's like 25-meter long corridor or room with windows at the other side, and from that illumination there was something that seemed to have a jagged, dark shield, jagged edge, like pixelated, edged thing, and it just went, and it was it I could only detect movement at the time when it stopped. It was when it appeared to have blurred to where it was, and then it blurred diagonally across the room even closer to me, but it still hadn't reached me yet. And at this point I realized that I'm not the apex predator.
Yeah.
And I then, from that point, I woke up asleep. I was standing at this point, and I woke up later seated in my chair, like, Neo at his desk at the computer. That's all I remember, was the 2 times that I saw this, like, I suppose some kind of creature, low creature, not dog height, higher, like a person crouching, but still trying to walk, you know what I mean? Like leg height, hip height, like it was trying to not be seen, but I could see it when it stopped. And if I wasn't paying attention, I wouldn't have seen it. If it was only at the side of my eyes, I might have noticed it a little more. But I did watch it approach me in two steps, 2 jumps, and then I don't know what happened after that. I just don't know what happened. And when I came to, my computer beeped because the power came back on. But I was not asleep. The power had just been cut. I was about to walk towards the window to see if anything else was affected, and that's when this thing happened. And I was absolutely beside myself with fear at the second hop. The first hop, no, it's still far enough away not to be a threat. So that was the first thing. And the other thing, Mickey, I wanted to bring up, because that's, I can't explain that at all. But another one I can explain quite well, and I was quite comfortable with, was my wife was working late shifts, coming home past midnight, and I was in bed by myself. And I thought, we usually have some pet on the bed at some point, like small cats. So, I'm there, and I felt I'd had my back to the door. I hadn't noticed anything at all, no prior sounds. But then, who knows, right? I was awoken by the bed being sat on and it depressing down with the weight of a person. And I said hello to my wife and turned, but there was nobody there. No one at all. I didn't see anybody because it's outside of my ability to see something like this, an apparition, I suppose. And I said, quite openly, straight to it, I can't see you and I can't hear you. I know you're here, but I'm sorry, if you're not a relative, I'm just going to have to ask you to leave. And it did. And I went, ooh, maybe I should have asked more questions at that point. Right? I know that the pets have abandoned the bedroom entirely on the nights when really freaky stuff happens. I don't mean with my wife and I mean extra.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Just to clarify. No, I mean I mean other events that they're read in my book, Visitors, A Lifetime of Experiences. So they've just refused to even come in the room. It's like they know, oh, tonight's the night. Yeah, no, I'm not, screw that. I'm out of here. And they, with all of their might, would refuse to stay. So I say these, Mackie, I say these things because I've had absolute one-to-one experiences where these aren't in our current space. Yes, they're like either out of phase. So you can be 180 degrees out of phase or 90 degrees out of phase. Or I think when we first invented the telegraph, it was a one-to-one. One end had a do, on the other end had the same thing. And we were sending electrical pulses down, which would just replay and be played on the other device with no delay. It was just the speed of light, right? Speed of electrons. We were able to say, well, I know I want 2 operators at my end, but wow, the cost of having a cable go across the US was ridiculous. So what we did, we invented a way of splitting it first 180 degrees out of phase. So we had 2, and we ended up with 16 out of phase elements just far enough apart to have a send and a receive wire. And each of them were out of phase from each other. So you could have 16 telegraph machines at one end, 16 at the other, have 16 operators at both ends. And it's basically 16 channels on a single pair, just having them out of phase from each other. Now think about how that could apply to either multiple universes or cloaking devices where you're just being out of phase with the existence, being in this, let's call it this reality, but being out of phase. We can't see them. We can't hear them, can't see them, and that's the end of that.
And that's critically important, right? The unseen quality of these things. I believe very firmly that occasionally, now, first of all, we know that certain things become visible at certain times. And there's stories about that as well in folklore. There's a story of Brigadoon, a town in Scotland, who becomes visible once every 100 years. There are the stories of the people that go down into the earth, and time flows at a different speed, so they emerge.
The Native Americans said that they went down with the ant people.
That's exactly right. Now, and again, this city in China that appeared in the clouds apparently, and it was not a Fata Morgana. I watched a documentary around this, and every scientific explanation was put forward, and not one of them fit.
Swamp gas.
Well,
swamp gas.
Oh, it's the swamp gas. Now, maybe these stories of and there are many in folklore. They're actually stories of islands and cities in the sky. Believe it or not, It's a common theme. It's not just one crazy thing. It's part of Gulliver's Travels as well. The island of Laputa floats in the sky as well, and if you're looking at this Skinwalker Ranch, out of phase or cloaked or whatever blob, you look at the ability of the UAPs to blink in and out of existence, however they do it, then why not? I know this sounds crazy, but why not a city in the sky? I mean, ultimately, if the technology exists, and it clearly does, then of course you should be able to cloak objects that are large. I mean, imagine. So again, I come back to the fact that I believe we are like the third world up on the surface here. Now we are developing, maybe even lower than the third world. We're developing technologies, but we're still just banging rocks together compared to these guys. And for all we know, and this goes back to something that was found off the coast of I think it was. Where was the Tic Tac first seen? Was it off the coast of Florida or California? I think it was California, right?
Yeah, there was 2 events 4 years apart from each other. Yeah.
Now, wherever that was, and I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but wherever that was, they did some more studies, and actually people of the Nimitz, they formed this this group of people that investigate these things, and they saw that it seemed like as though like massive amounts. Look, they called it cargo, but all these things were dropped into the ocean from somewhere in the clouds, like almost like a production line of stuff.
Wow.
Came down. Yeah. I mean, again, you really have to look to find it and see it and whatnot. But the point is, what if we lived in the middle of this amazingly busy civilization or civilizations, or complex trade port, who knows what it is, completely oblivious to it. Think of it this way. There's an anthill in your backyard, in the middle of New York. In the middle of New York, and there's an anthill in your backyard. Right now, as far as the anthill is concerned, that's the world. I mean, the ants go about their business. They go foraging in the forest. They might go into your house once in a while, get some sugar, whatever. But the ants are completely oblivious to the existence of New York. In fact, they couldn't conceive of New York as a thing, right? Because it's so far outside their imagination, if you want, okay, or perceptive capabilities. In fact, like Dave told me once, the only ant that can see us is a jumping jack.
That's right.
It's the only thing that can track us. And I've seen them track me. It's a little bit scary. I tell you what. But think of us as the anthill. We simply cannot conceive of this structure that we're in as something artificial, and most of the structure is completely invisible to us. Like the anthill cannot perceive New York in its entirety. Impossible. It couldn't, even if it tried, right? Even if you told the ants, hey, there's this whole big city called New York, Manhattan, whatever, here it is. Oh yeah, that's what? it would be meaningless to the ant. Now, and then if you look at the world that we do inhabit and the really strange things that are happening, and I'm talking about the moon, the sun, and the earth specifically. They make no sense as a unit. And we've talked about this at length, but it all sort of ties into it. If you look at the moon is just big enough from the earth to block out the sun. I mean, what? So let's say this again. The moon is just big enough to block out the sun. That shouldn't be possible. That shouldn't happen. That this actually is a thing is completely inexplicable. It's a 1 in a trillion shot.
That's right.
People have said it's easier to explain the non-existence than the existence of the moon, right? So maybe that's because they made it that way. Maybe they built it that way for whatever reason. I mean, who knows, right? But the point is, once you start stepping back and maybe trying to perceive things differently, right? Park that we are the pinnacle of creation. Just park that, somewhere. And then step back and then look around you and look at all the things that make no sense, can't be explained, have our head scratching. And then you start your real journey as to, what you want to discover here. Because we are starting with the wrong premise. We are the apex predator, Dave. We're in charge of everything here. Thank you very much. But we're in charge of exactly nothing. Okay? If UAPs are real, and now everybody says, yes, it's a real phenomenon, don't know what it is, but it's real, then we clearly do not understand even a little bit how the world really works.
Did you see the footage, Mackie, from the Iraq War? Of that sphere? So. There's a metal sphere flying over beneath the chopper, which isn't going up or down in height. It's just doing its own thing. And
really?
it's been released. I'll flick you a copy of it. And it's about halfway between the chopper and the ground, flying just near to treetop height.
Oh.
And they track it as best they can. It comes down the street, they try and follow it, and it's not a drone. It's perfectly metal and spherical. And it has no blades, no wings, nothing. All right. And it's small. It's real small. Maybe a meter across or something like that. For all intents and purposes, this was classified. And now it's been released. So, and there's not just one of those. There's many, many examples of those now. But that's... So what was the real reason they were in Iraq, I wonder?
Yeah,
You've got to start questioning that.
We've got our suspicions. You have to remember that, of course, Iraq and Iran, for that matter, are what is referred to in ancient times as Mesopotamia. The Tustran and the Tigris and Euphrates, both rivers apparently meant to have been dug up by the Igigi,
That's
the
right.
people.
Yeah.
In service of the Anunnaki.
Mhm.
So,
according to the Sumerian stories, that's right.
You go right back to the beginning with this stuff. And you know what I just recently thought about as well? Well, I say recently, just in the last couple of days. And I know this is, I don't want to go Bible bashing, but the Tower of Babel. And now the people of Babel, they built this tower allegedly, right? And apparently it was a real thing, maybe even, But think about this for a second. Now, the tower is never going to be big enough to reach out of the atmosphere. That's just not going to happen. We don't have, even today, we don't really have the materials. We're sort of on the edge of it, but we're getting there, right? But, so they built this tower. Were they trying to build a tower to reach an anomaly that was akin to the one found on the Skinwalker Ranch? Were they trying? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Were they if they kept witnessing stuff coming out of thin air, maybe they built the tower up to that point in the sky.
Yeah, maybe they did. So I'm wondering, are the guys on Skinwalker Ranch trying, or should they try to build some kind of, I don't know, I guess some kind of construction framework up? Because if it's only 10, 20, 30 meters, it's quite feasible to do that, right? You could build up like a skeleton frame, and
you could do scaffolding. Yeah.
That's it. You could if you wanted to. And then the tower was destroyed, or so they tell us, by God. So they tell us.
Mm-hmm.
And for our troubles, we were confused. Our language was confused, and we were sent to all corners
with different languages. That's right. So we couldn't communicate with each other.
Right. Now you got to ask yourself. Okay, look, if I had done, something terrible, like, gone against, something God's word or whatever, then it makes sense. I mean, if some kind of, grievous sin had been committed. But these were just people building a tower. Now, what they say is, they were, it was their pride, their hubris, to be like God, to equal God's works. Now, the almighty, powerful God that I'm thinking of wouldn't really be jealous of a tower now, would they? I don't think, but, what do I know? But maybe it was much more practical, in fact, where the people that would have been affected by this tower, right, decided, no, we can't have these criminals build a tower. That's just not going to happen. And they knock it down, right? It's like, the cargo cult people starting to build little ladders that go over the fence into the airport, maybe, right? Oh, they're back. Let's go to the airport. Let's build something we can get over the fence with. Now, we wouldn't, for security reasons, we wouldn't let them do it. We would knock down whatever they're building to get over the fence, right? Because you can't just have people run around the runway. That's just not going to happen. So we would stop that. Is this a similar situation where the tower could have interfered with the operation of whatever? Or, would it have revealed something about the nature of the reality we actually inhabit if the tower had actually come up to the anomaly, as it were?
You could build a Stargate kind of shape around the outside of it, and after we've fully determined what it is, so, when they flew the drones backwards and forwards, and the drones lost their positioning, had to reset.
Yes, you saw that, right?
Yeah, I watched all of that. So they were able to trace using drones, 1,000 drones or whatever, 100 drones. To find where this space was by flying through it as a plane, as a flat plane. They were able to do it in conjunction with each other. Very clever. And I'm at the point now, Mackie, where they've drilled into the mesa.
Yes, and okay, I think you're up to date then.
Yeah.
And what they found in the mesa is this: they found a metal object that is as tall as the mesa, and in front of that there's another metal object which is like dome-shaped. And then they've done this with ground-penetrating radar. They've done a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So they're quite confident. And they've when they first drilled last year, they had these metal flakes coming out, which were different on either side of the flake. The materials though corresponded, not identical, but
so a bimetal.
Yes.
Yeah.
It corresponded to the material that NASA uses as heat plating on shuttles.
Yeah, right.
So it's really, and it looks like it's manufactured, right? Or that's what they assume. Now this drilling though, they didn't get any of that. They got other stuff though, which was very odd. But I'll let you see that if you haven't yet. So there's something in that mesa. And mesa is just this rocky outcropping, really, is what it is, right? And there's something inside of it, as opposed to the anomaly that hangs in the air. There's another thing, or several things, it seems, like gateways maybe, that are quite high up in the air over the Skinwalker Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
So there's stuff that's in the air, there's stuff that's underground, there's stuff that's moving about, funny lights, and it's just... The thing is this, right? It's not that this just happened to, be a report in the last 10 years, last 50 years, last 100 years. The Native Americans of that area have always steered clear and talked about portals to other places that exist.
What about the doorways, Mickey? The doorways they carved into the rock face.
Yes.
Was there a portal there at one? Is there still a portal there?
Maybe.
They built a doorway, right?
Yeah. Why?
Exactly.
Why?
They said that's where the people come from.
Yeah.
They come through. They come from this point right here, so we built a doorway.
Yeah. So if you take all of this in its totality, you have to say, we really don't know. We don't know. We just have no clue. Yes, we say this, and we are very, very smart. Look at us. We're so clever. We're looking at the exhaust of a rocket that's ascending into the sky and trying to determine the nature of the civilization from these exhaust fumes that put it into space, or trying to put it into space. Mm-hmm. That's where we're at. We don't even know where to begin. We're looking at that exhaust, all the fumes and smoke coming out, and from that we try to deduce the nature of the civilization that launched it. We're not even scratching the surface of our understanding here, and that's the scary. They've been here for a long time, Dave.
Yeah,
long time.
And this is what's really weird, right? So we live a duality. That's what we do. In real life, most of us don't consider anything that we can't see or touch as being real. Happy to dismiss it. It just makes me much more comfortable, says the sheeple. Acquisitive mind, an inquisitive mind, is one where there's probably something to that. Right? In our sci-fi duality, we've imagined all sorts of crazy stuff that we haven't made yet, that we just totally accept in sci-fi as being a thing. We've come a long way from the time when we said that Dick Tracy could hover in a trash can using a watch, like a video watch communicating device. Right? We've made a platform just like that flying trash can thing. We've made the talking watch or the video watch. That's all a thing now. It is a thing. We've made them. From the earliest sci-fi, we've had, what are they called? Shields. We've had virtual shields that weren't there. Electronic ones. Even Lost in Space had shields. Star Trek's had shields. Imaginary in sci-fi, not in reality. We've not made them yet. There is some research going on right now where they say we're really, really close to it, which is tremendous. We've beamed people in and out. We've gone between realities. We've done all of these things But when confronted with them in real life, we dismiss the hell out of them. I mean, what? If we're happy to accept it, either in Harry Potter and the other realm, if we're happy to accept it in Star Trek or Star Wars or Alien or any of the, even going back to black and white TV, the Twilight Zone, if we've been made to accept it in movies, why can't we accept it in real life as being a thing? Stargate, love it. You dial up your destination, and then it turns into like water, and you just walk through it, and you're there. Why is it so hard to grasp that it? If we can imagine it, we're more likely to pursue the creation of it. Because there's a lot of people, Maggie, that were born before we had video watchers that strive to make it. And we did. We got there eventually. Yes. One generation. We got there. So, talking about shields up. Well, they're making them right now. They're trying to perfect them, make them a thing. Electron propulsion, plasma propulsion, the same things that, the Star Wars ships kind of fly through space with. We've made those.
That's right.
Right? It's not a rocket. It's not a rocket. Nothing moves, and yet you're propelled forward. Anti-gravity. I think that's actually already been made. Mickey, what's your impression?
There's things that have been made?
As things we've made.
We have moved beyond 1950s and 60s science fiction into science reality. 70s, 80s, and 90s we're catching up on. Funnily enough, science fiction that was written in the 2000s or the noughties and the teens, that's a reality today. And I'm talking about specific genetic stuff, right? Genetic nanotechnology. But the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we're still trying to catch up. And I'm talking about specifically time travel, multidimensional science fiction, etc. But all the scientific advancements we said in the 40s, 50s, and 60s we have.
We've done.
We've done it.
Did you know the one sci-fi movie that I loved the most was an old 1930s movie, I think. Which turned out to me when I was watching it today, like this story of Elon Musk. But they made rockets that landed on their tails. And NASA could never do that. Right? We never had that until Elon Musk decided that was going to be a thing. It's so a thing, right? Now we take it for granted. Oh, that's what they do now. Right? Sure. You know what it takes to do it. Well, he just did it. So I think as far as like this is this juxtaposition of our duality, where I say that we imagine something and we can imagine that it's real, but in reality we turn away from it. It couldn't be real because we didn't make it. It already exists. Maybe it's already there. We haven't made it yet, but it's something else using it. No, that anti-gravity thing. No, there's portals in the sky or in a rock face. No, past civilization. No, we even deny that there could be an alien race sharing. Alien, I mean, not even of Earth, sharing an existence beneath the ocean in the Southern Ocean. Just come here and agreed with the local governments or the government together of the world and said, look, do you mind? We're just going to live here. We won't pay. We're not going to do anything, right? We're just here because our world blew up or something, right? Whatever. Into some excuse here. We're just going to live here. And we still want to deny that. That's even a thing. So I accept personally, and I know Meki, I'll let you speak on it. I accept that we are living in amongst all of this technology, And I accept it. I accept that something can take a step from one reality into ours, or out of phase into our in phase and back again. I've seen an example of it. I just accept it. It's there. I accept telepathy. I accept telekinesis, even psychokinesis. I accept deja vu. I accept it all. I think it's all a thing, Mackie.
On that, so I do as well. Oddly enough, I have no perceptual problems at all with accepting any of it, because I think the universe is a lot more mysterious than we could ever imagine, right? Or the multiverse, for that matter. What I find, though, is this, Dave. So let's say you and I accept it, and it's a thing, and there it is. A lot of times, what I come up against is the so what. So what I mean by that is, so I have these conversations, and people say, why do you care? What's the point? Why do you do what you do? What's the point of the radio show? Why do you read these books? What is the point? Because for a lot of people, whether or not it exists is a complete non-topic. It's not that they deny the existence. It's not they say, yes, it exists. It's just, I'm just not interested. And to me, that is the most astounding mindset I've come across. I just don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, what?
Totally understand what you mean.
So, yes, I'm with you. In my opinion, everything exists. If we live in a multiverse, let's say we do, then everything is real somewhere. There is no such thing as fiction. I think we discussed it before. There can't be, because everything that we write is a reality somewhere. There can't be fiction if the multiverse as a concept is true. Even if the universe is infinite, forget the multiverse, but if this universe is infinite, then also there can't be any fiction.
I don't understand, Becky.
Sorry?
We're past time and there's no music.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know, Dave. I don't know. You tell me. What's going on in the chat? Hey, guys, can you still hear us?
Let me just pull up the station's audio and see if the music did start. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, it did. It did. Let's bail.